everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Uncommon Podcast. We're so excited to be here with you all today and discuss more information that we've been learning, that we're sharing about the love languages. Incredible topic. Today we're going to be discussing acts of service. How love can be servitude and different ways that you can serve your loved one if that is their love language or if it's your love language. But primarily this is all about how you can be better at showing your loved one that you love them based on their love language. So we're kind of sharing one mic today. Go ahead and break it down for us, compadre.
Yeah, for sure.
Break it down.
Bug in my throat. I'm going to talk about some, at least how to identify what like a true act of service actually is. There's three elements, right, that we learned that were like the core of how you think about that whole process of creating acts of service. Share some tips and tricks on stuff that you can do to like better speak that language and start the evaluation process. We'll talk about the process in and of itself. And some red flags that might help you, catch up a little bit faster. So, part of the foundation of this, and this was a little bit more challenging one for us to talk about and kind of wrap our heads around what acts of service actually broke down. We did that several times.
Yes.
In our discussion.
Yes.
In a very literal sense. So I think it's important to talk about what acts of service actually are.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Oh, I thought you were going to continue.
Oh, I can't.
So
my pitch.
The cool thing about this story is about the way that this is written is there's usually a story. So the way this goes is it tells a tale about this gentleman who basically doesn't want to do certain chores because he feels like he does enough for his wife to show that he loves her. He does a lot around the house. He does yard work. He fixes anything that's broken. The typical things that he feels like, well, she should know I love her because I do all these things. It's not just for me, that's for her, right? But that's not acts of service. If your love language is acts of service and you're not being served those acts that would really benefit you, then you're not going to feel loved. And so there's 3 points that you talked about, which was impact, initiative, and attitude. So when you're considering acts of service, it recommends getting a list, basically. It's like the supreme honeydew list from your partner, spouse, loved one, wife, right? And so with that said, then you can identify what it is that is going to be most impactful. So for one example is the bathroom. This guy talks about how it took him a long time to figure it out, but he does a good job of cleaning the bathroom. His wife feels loved because it's a service that needs to be completed. She probably could get it done too, but because he does it for her and lovingly with initiative and a positive attitude, then he's successful. On the other hand, if he is doing this chore and he's got a poopy attitude about it, mumbling and groaning like, well, no, she's not going to feel like you're doing this for the purpose of love. And so that's where it kind of gets tricky, is because we talked about how that can kind of become manipulative.
Well, and so the beginning of that, right before we take a deep dive into the core elements.
Yeah.
And this one I was picking up is we start with identifying, giving examples of what acts of service actually. Oh gosh, I don't know if they really need to want to hear me.
Oh yeah, we want to hear
you. But the whole, I think that remembering our initial discussion into this topic, that's what took us the longest to grab a hold of, is the process by which you identify what a good act of service is, because there's so many different kinds, right? And so it's not just a blanket, okay, well, I'll take care of all the landscaping, the man things,
Yeah.
and the cars and all that stuff. And I assume she doesn't need help in the house,
Yeah.
right? And so,
So that you don't help.
So then,
Or you
yeah,
assuming-
you're not doing the right thing, like the things that matter to her.
Right.
You're doing the things that
Mhm.
right? In our brains,
Because it's comfortable.
initially
we can
we'd
do
say,
it.
well, we're doing half the duties in the house or more,
Right.
right? Why isn't this working?
Mhm.
Like, why I'm doing acts of service
Mhm.
for my wife and consciously thinking those things.
Mhm.
That's, I think, what, like, fundamentally, if you have the patience to, which you should,
Mhm.
right, for your partner to learn
Mhm.
through those things. Like maybe it's
Mm.
not mowing the lawn because in her mind she thinks you're already going to do that. She has some
Yeah.
level of expectation that's not
Yeah.
communicated, right?
Yeah, it's something to get done.
She needs help with the dishes. I can
Mhm.
use an example, right?
Right.
Or just taking clothes out of the wash,
Exactly.
whatever the case might be. It's just
Whatever
a
it is.
process,
Mhm.
right? And it was a process for us to like
Mhm.
really, okay, well, why doesn't that make sense? Well, discussing everything as guys.
Mhm.
So like, well, that doesn't make any sense. He's doing access. I would have thought he's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
You mean he's not doing the right thing? And discovering that in the book is, so it is a process, right?
Mhm.
It's a learning curve,
Mhm.
right? And so, we'll talk about flags at the end, but once you get through that, right, you push through those things,
Mhm.
and I will tell you guys, I know we're not like big on maybe verbal communication, but if you have the mindset to ask your wife,
Mhm.
what do you need help with?
Yeah.
Like, what would make you feel better? Like what can I do to make you feel that like fulfill this or my action, right? Doing that instead of like trial and error and getting angry and frustrated and all that kind of stuff. If you could, that would be a whole superpower for you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Through this love language, right? And so once you figure that out, then the concepts by which you're doing it, I would think you would learn in that process,
Mhm.
right? You talk about impactful,
Mhm. Yep. Deep impact.
Yep. The deep impact.
Yep. Making impact on your wife means working smarter, not harder.
See, I thought of when you said that quality, not quantity.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Right.
the whole that almost brings it full circle, right? Because you mentioned a little bit earlier about attitude,
Mhm.
right? If you did the dishes because you knew she wanted to do the dishes, but you did them
Mhm.
with an attitude,
Yeah.
and you were bitter every night, and you
Yeah.
avoided it, and you made a big deal about it, but
Mhm.
you still did them,
Mhm.
right? Throw it in her face,
Yeah.
all these
Like,
things.
look who's doing the dishes.
I'm doing the dishes for you, make an announcement and a spectacle
Yeah.
of it. No matter how many times you do those dishes, you can do them 5,000 times. She's not really going to care because it makes
Right.
because you got that attitude.
Right.
Right. You might do them incorrectly, not do them right, but do them with a smile and do them with like eagerness. Right. I want to do this for you, even though I'm not sure how.
Yeah.
Right. You could do that, 20 times, and it makes a world of difference.
Mhm.
It's, about how you do. That's why I thought of the quality, not
I like that.
quantity.
That's a good comparison
Because
because it specifically talks about that. You could be doing all these other things, like you just said, like yard work and stuff. But if it's not what is important to her, like in this story here, a separate story talks about a gentleman who, is winterizing the cars, pulling Thanksgiving and Christmas decorations out from the attic, putting weather strips on the windows and sidings, tuning up a snowblower, cutting logs for the fireplace, and not a drop of that could fill your wife's love tank. We talk a lot about the love tank and filling that up. So she feels validated and valued and loved,
Right.
But if you're not speaking her love language, that tank's going to be low, and that's going to make your relationship not positive. But the more you have that love tank filled up, once you can identify the love language and utilize actions like this one here with acts of service, like here's a good one here. The good news is you could bring home Chinese takeout, clean the kitchen afterwards, and then put the kids to bed by yourself on a night when she's facing a deadline, for example, at work. So just kind of recognizing the situation and being like a good teammate is the kind of way I see that, But it's easier said than done because
You're right.
you could be doing stuff. You've got a deadline too, maybe.
Well, and part part of that from experience for me is vulnerability, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to let go of the fear that you're gonna do it wrong.
That's true.
Because
Wow.
I would probably say, from what I've learned from other women and experience,
Mhm.
it, and my mom and
Yeah,
friends,
family, friends, and such.
if there's effort and genuine effort behind it, like the end result to them, I mean, it's
still acceptable.
yeah,
because it was effort,
it's got
even if it wasn't correct.
equal or more impact because
It's still helpful.
and initiative was taken,
Mhm.
and there's a level of vulnerability you have to just like, I'm gonna do the best I can. I'm trying to help you out, kind of deal.
What you just said right here echoes that. Whatever makes your wife feel genuinely and spectacularly loved is where your focus and effort should be. Because we talked about really identifying whatever that might be. It can be difficult if you don't get the right data, so to speak, from them.
Yeah.
One of the tips is, hey, get like the ultimate honey-do list, and then working that and identifying what is the most impactful for the deep impact that you can have.
And what's I think,
and then taking that initiative and not just like, oh, when are you going to do that, honey?
Yeah.
Like,
waiting for the cues.
Yeah.
I think that's
get
a
in
huge,
the game, man. Get in the game.
That's when you like break down points, dude. That's a huge element of those like brownie points, so to speak.
Yep.
It's just taking the initiative, like just get it done. Just do it. Yeah.
Come on, just do it.
Do it.
Give me some. Do it. Do it. Do it. Do it.
But it's you're using that one a lot more than the.
I didn't know I left it there. I wanted this one.
Yeah, that's the one. What was I talking about?
Oh, we were talking about being genuine.
And taking initiative.
Taking initiative.
Initiative, right? Like doing it without asking, right? If even if she's already doing the dishes, maybe offer to help dry them or whatever. That kind of stuff. Or do something else that she might need help with, or and ask that question.
Blah, 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 I can take care of this.
Mm-hmm.
And having a good attitude about it. We talk about that being biblical as well. Doing all things in joy.
Mm-hmm.
Find joy in all things. And that's not always easy. And so, like, this is going to become a habit eventually, but it's going to be awkward at first. But you got to make those attempts, like you were talking about. And that's going to be the good thing, is just doing it. This is super interesting, too. We talked about, not only being intentional, but doing it right away in a timely fashion, because you won't. It says right here, let me just read this section. Whatever goodwill you build up by encouraging your wife to share her ultimate to-do list with you will be squandered in no time if that list gets buried under a mountain of paperwork on your desk. The last thing you want is for your wife or spouse or partner to have to remind you of the things you intended to do for her. That won't feel like love to her. Love is always freely given.
Yeah.
It can't be demanded, cajoled, or coaxed from someone, if I said that correctly.
And there's a lot of truth in that. Because I mean, there's like comedians, and all kinds of bits about about exactly that. You just don't. I lost my train of thought.
But the difficult thing is how that can become manipulated. Like that's the joking part of how, like, if you start doing things like this, then you can manipulate somebody. That's where we got to. And really it dives into, before we go down that rabbit hole, the 3D experience, like a 3D digital experience, the drive, discipline, and dedication. So easier said than done, right? Especially with so many other things vying for your time, attention, and energy. The key to initiating acts of service is to give it a 3D experience. So you got to have drive, discipline, dedication. It talks about planning it out, having the drive to get it done, whatever that might be. So scheduling it and pursuing it. Drive speaks to your motivation.
It shows eagerness.
Yep. And discipline refers to scheduling it out. Dedication makes sure that what's getting started gets finished. I mean, I will admit that in the past have been a get started, not finish in certain projects. And that wasn't good because really we're all a mix of these different love languages. Some of them I think impact us differently, and we're primarily one or more. And so if you don't, whatever that is, if you don't finish it, that's bad. And so I've gotten good at actually finishing stuff, but I've been on both ends of
That's
it.
true. That's true.
So service with a smile, that was kind of interesting talking about here. Refusing to play the hero card or the martyr card, like we talked about earlier. Like, I'm doing the dishes here. Like, look at me fixing this away.
Not making a spectacle of it. Not like rubbing it in their face.
Yeah.
Or,
just doing it.
Because doesn't it eventually talks about like utilizing that in a form of manipulation?
Right, the doormat conundrum.
Ooh, dun, dun, dun. Oh, where's the?
That's what you wanted, right?
That's the one. Yeah. Oh my gosh, bro. But I like when you. Get this. And it talks about like the motive that you have behind.
It could be abuse, man.
Yeah, because you're doing it for a reason, right? You're doing it to jab at them, or you're doing it. There's not. You don't do it because you want to. You expect them to do something else in return, or you're just doing it. For the nasty way to put it, you're just doing it to shut them up. Those kinds of things. Like you feel that stuff.
Oh yeah.
With the emotions that you put out there, and so that's where some of those like you said, the 3D experience comes into play, right? You got to show all of those things in order for it to feel genuine, and for her to connect with it, and to really like that would be you fully speaking the language.
And what's cool is identifying those things that you just talked about, because once you have that allows for you to better understand what it is that you want to execute. If that your partner, wife, loved one, love languages, acts of service. But also, we learned that this could be a manipulative situation. This is one of the 5 love languages. Acts of service seems to have the most potential for abuse, or at least the perception of abuse. Because a wife with less than a noble intention could conceivably convince her husband to do just about anything for her, all in the name of love. In the name of love.
Meaning what?
Good question. One fed-up wife put it this way. Should I read?
Yeah.
Okay. I've served him for 20 years, and I've waited on him hand and foot. I've been his doormat while he ignored me, mistreated me, and humiliated me in front of my friends and family. I hate him. I wish him no ill, but I resent him, and I no longer wish to live with him. For 2 decades, that woman performed acts of service for her husband, but they weren't expressions of love. They were done out of fear, guilt, and resentment. How many other well-meaning men and women have similar stories? Many of them are former or current members of the Doormat Society. But this basically paints a picture of everything that you just discussed, and how that can be negative depending on how you're getting the stuff done. Or if you're just manipulating somebody into doing things for you, that's not love.
Yeah, well, I think anybody who's been in a serious relationship would tell you that you can feel, right? You can feel when it's not genuine for you, and you know what your reaction is going to be when it's not genuine when you put it out there, right? Like even if she's pissed off because you didn't mow the lawn, and then you go out and mow the lawn, irritated because she's upset, right? And you do it anyway, and she's still upset. You're like, why is she still upset?
I just mowed the lawn.
I just mowed the lawn. I just did what you wanted.
Because you wanted.
But because of the way we did it,
I did want you to do it. I didn't want you to go like that.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. That's where that.
You're so mean.
That's where that comes from.
That is where it comes from.
It is.
Yep.
The doormat.
Yep.
Conundrum.
Yep. Yes. Conundrum. A doormat is an inanimate object, something you step on, wipe your feet on. It has no will of its own. It doesn't object to the way it's treated. It serves its purpose. Period. When we treat our wives as objects, or even give them cause to feel as though they are being mistreated as objects, we eliminate the possibility of love. Manipulation by guilt. He gives examples like, If you're a good wife, you do this for me,
Mm-hmm.
is not the language of love. Coercion by fear. You'll do this or you'll be sorry. That's alien to love. That's how it words this.
I think what hit me close there is when you're in that mentality, because again, I'm sure we've all been there. When you're in that mentality, you don't think of your spouse or significant other as a person. You objectify them. Right?
Yes,
no
that's
longer
exactly right.
they're a thing. They're no
Yeah.
longer a person to you, and that hit me hard. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a crazy switch that you
quickly.
flipped. Yeah. And you're just kind of in your own doormat state, and motive state. Well, I do this because, or you should do this because, or whatever that attitude is of manipulation.
Right.
You're so deep into that and justifying that you don't realize. You don't realize that.
Yeah. Because one could be trying to prove their love, and instead they're taking advantage of it. That's the fine line of this love language. Because if it's a person that doesn't technically have good ethics, you could be completely taken advantage of for much more than just your feelings.
Oh, 100%. That's, and maybe that's why God, because we skipped this, right? So this is God's way of like building us up to this, like maybe it was like one of the more complex ones, because even the book says, right, it was like a
warning
disclosure statement. This step has the highest success rate for manipulation, and the highest danger rate, or whatever.
Nothing in the others said that.
Yeah, no, introduce it that way. And so I think that's when we talked about how complex it actually is, and to be aware of you doing those things to somebody else.
Yeah.
Because again, like you said, it'd be very easy to do. Well, I did this because, or you should do this because. Using love. Well, if you love me, you should be doing this.
Fine. I'm going to walk the dog.
But I'm only doing it because I love you. Like those aren't forms of like oppression, where it is, right? So that whole concept about like dehumanizing our significant others, like that's a severe disrespect.
It's the complete opposite of love.
And how easy that could happen. Yeah, the complete opposite of love. Yeah, you're right. And so I think that hit super close to that. I've actually done that to somebody I cared about before.
Yeah.
Right. Make me aware of not doing that.
Right.
Again. Right. And then the whole, I think, big, huge tip that I took away from this, that I think the book called The Flag, was the whole concept behind if you're continuing to do what you consider an act of service for your significant other, it says, and you're constantly getting criticized for what you're doing and how you're doing it, whatever that might be, then this is not her love language.
Right.
So it's
you could
very
be wrong.
clear. You either could be wrong, or maybe have her take the tests again.
Yeah.
Or something's going on in there that it's definitely, and the book's like firm about that.
Yeah.
This is not her love language. So I say that with emphasis because it's very easy for us as men, especially when we're genuinely trying to make an effort and we come up short. We get down on ourselves.
Oh yeah, and then we don't want to
go further.
Move forward.
And I think that's why, again, we emphasized before, it's a process to work through all of these things.
Well said.
But
it's like just like anything, it's practice.
Yeah.
And you're not gonna be correct on every one, but it is gonna take effort. It's gonna be those difficult talks. It's like in the bedroom or the kitchen or the bathroom, wherever. It's like, hey, just really want to understand this. Really want to be a better husband or whatever that relationship scenario is.
And part of where I was going with that is I want, especially when this is what you're thinking is the love lines, you're going through this process, is if you find that you're getting criticized, right? Don't let that discourage you from learning the other love languages. It'd be very easy for us as men to do that. I've done it before, yeah, and just quit and say, well, I'm not good at this, or I'm not getting this, or nothing. Nothing is a common thing for you. Nothing I do matters.
Right.
Right.
And then you start gaslighting yourself.
100%. And you
you don't need that.
Lose part of yourself. No. And so it's more encouraging, like, know this is possible, that it will happen when you're working on this step with your significant other, but you might come up short. You know, so, I mean, or the book would not have emphasized that.
Yeah.
And so,
and this is what it specifically states: if, as you mentioned earlier, becoming fluent in a second love language takes time, like you pointed out. Mistakes are inevitable. Not every idea will work, especially if the two of you aren't yet on the same page. So having that difficult conversation. Sometimes one really wants to grow, the other one's like whatever, and it's like whatever, but you got to make it work together. And then it continues. If, on the other hand, you perform the acts of service that your wife said mean the most to her, and you consistently get criticism like you're talking about, or no reaction at all from her, it's pretty safe bet that acts of service isn't your wife's love language after all. So the test sometimes can be wrong depending on how you're answering the questions. If you think you're answering them how someone wants them to be, that's not going to be effective. And so it warns you in that capacity, so you're not being taken advantage of.
And you know what? Maybe another good tip, full circle, because all of this is it circles back around like the three elements that we kind of went back, right? And after you go through the search,
you mean these three?
You have to the three. What is it? 3 core elements. I think that's what you. That's what I wrote down, anyways. Focusing on the
fluency. You can break down the fluency strategy into 3 easy to remember parts. First one being a deep impact.
Right. You made me lose my train of thought. I want a whole expansion. Right, so kind of bring. No, that's okay. Bringing things full circle. It's all good. But making just bring everything full circle, right? In making your impact with those 3 core elements, right? Taking initiative, the attitude by which you do it, so that there's no motive behind it, which is super hard to do, right? For us, and one of the tips I was going to give is that, like, maybe if we think of the things that are hard for us to do because we don't want to do them, those might be where we start giving, because those might be things that we are avoiding doing, which might be a thorn in our significant others.
That's a nugget of knowledge right there.
Maybe that's the short list.
Probably where you want to begin.
Where you start, right? Like, if
you don't want to do
every time she asks you to do the dishes, you're like, that aggravates you the most. Then, dude, like, maybe try doing the dishes like first. Without her asking, and see, like, if that's magical. I mean, sometimes we figure this stuff out and we're like, is that all I had to do? It's just like,
awesome, that's the other side of it. That's all the greatness that can occur when you dial in and your aim is accurate. Boom.
Yeah, you're right. We talked a lot about, like, this is a process, and I feel like maybe negative tone is a lot of work. I hope your spouse is in this. It's not that. It's just very different.
Yes.
Right. And it's a different process than what we're used to in the others.
Yeah, because it's not like you can say, "Hey, I love you," because it'll be like, whatever.
Yeah.
Prove it.
Right.
That's basically what this is.
Right.
It's like, show me.
Well, it's not like like physical touch.
Yeah.
Right. When, like, you have, like, one body and I have, like, hands, and I know if I touch you, it makes that. Right. This, like, acts of service thing. I mean, there's anywhere from household chores to like an inside and outside, or like working on the car, or picking up the kids, or all these different, like, options, or like boxes for us to. That's why we say that. But on the positive side, yes, it's a lot of work, but probably one of the more internally gratifying when you figure that out, and rewarding, and you think, well, shit, I wish I would have learned that years ago. If it was that easy, if all I had to do was do the dishes one night a week or something. Yeah, if I just had to make another stop, and then give them ice cream, or whatever the case might be. Light bulb. So I think that's full circle
Absolutely.
on what I picked up when I learned about this particular love language.
Love it.
So
I
think
really
that's-
love talking about these love languages.
I know I've learned so much. I helped a family member. I'll say that. I'll generalize that. I helped a family member that came to me, and I pointed him in the direction. It's because of the opportunity I had to learn from this, right? And unfortunately, I'm not married anymore. But at the same time, like even these, and we've talked about this in other episodes in the series, that is really should be a fundamental focus for overall communication in all relationships.
Yes.
In your life, right? With our friendship, right? I think you and I have talked about that. And if you're not comfortable calling it a love language when you're talking about your broski, you can talk, label it something else, whatever. But know each other's language. It's only
homie language.
Homie language. It only makes you closer, bro.
Forever's gonna.
And so, I think that was one of the more relatable things I learned from doing this series for sure.
I agree, and that's the goal. With whatever you were learning in life is to make that applicable in different areas. And so the way that we've kind of taken this apart, that's our perception. We encourage you to read it your own, of course. That way you can develop success within your relationships. We hope you've enjoyed what we've learned. We want to share that with you because we feel like it's impactful. We want to be helpful. Please like this, share this post, send the podcast to a friend or family member. Did you have any other final thoughts before we conclude, sir?
No, it was an awesome series. We should do more of these, and so we love your feedback.
Absolutely,
because this has been our first actual series in one book, which I enjoy doing. But if there's anything else you guys want to hear about,
let us
please
know.
Interact with this. Give us your feedback too. We love to interact with all of you as well. So thank you so much for making this a part of your day.
Absolutely.
And thanks for the ideas in this particular series, and I look forward to bringing more uncommon topics.
You know it. Thank you again for tuning into the Uncommon Podcast, and we'll see you next time.